You're tired, but it's not a tiredness that sleep can cure. It's a weariness of the soul, of pretending everything is fine, of smiling on the outside while on the inside you scream, of being strong for everyone while inside you there is silent chaos. It's possible that no one notices. You leave the house, work, talk, even laugh, but when he's alone, his chest tightens, his mind races. The questions come flooding in. Why am I like this? When will this pass? Why do I feel like I'm about to fall apart? If you feel this or something similar, you are not alone. And most importantly, it doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. There is a culture, cruel, silent, and oppressive, that teaches that showing pain is a sign of weakness, that feeling too much is a flaw, that those who suffer from anxiety are dysregulated, unstable, and exaggerated. But what if it's just the opposite? Jordan Peterson teaches that what you feel, even when it seems out of place, is your soul trying to speak. Anxiety is often the body's cry in the face of a neglected soul. You've been ignoring your pain for so long that it's learned to scream in other ways, through a racing heart, a tight chest, insomnia, a feeling of suffocation. You are standing, but inside, you are collapsing, and no one sees, because you learned to hide. This emotional hiding isn't protection, it's a prison. You lock yourself inside, hoping no one will find out what's really going on. But I need to tell you this very clearly. You don't have to live in this hiding place anymore. You are not a burden. You are not a genetic error. You are not someone who needs to function better to be accepted. You are someone who feels, who thinks too much, who perceives more than you would like. And because of this, he suffers in silence. The world isn't ready for deep people. That's why those who feel too much are often seen as weak. But Jordan Peterson insists, depth is frightening because it reveals what many avoid in themselves. Your problem isn't feeling too much. It's not knowing what to do with what you feel. That's why this anxiety is so overwhelming, because it finds no space to be understood. You just want some relief, some mental silence, a place where you don't have to fight all the time to look good. And I want you to understand this strongly. You are not broken. You're carrying too much stuff that might not even be yours, guilt that doesn't belong to you, expectations that were placed on you without you realizing it. Anxiety is not a sentence, it's a symptom. It's your soul saying, hey, you in there, pay attention to me. So first of all, breathe. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel your body, feel your heart. You are alive, and that, despite everything, is a miracle. You don't need to understand everything right now, or find all the answers, but you need to recognize that something in you is crying out for help. And this request is not a sign of weakness. It's the beginning of your reconnection with yourself. In the next chapter, we'll dive deeper. Anxiety doesn't define you, it reveals you. The anxiety you feel is not the end of you. It's your beginning. She's not saying you're weak, maladjusted, or incapable. She's saying something inside you needs to be seen, and it hasn't been. Jordan Peterson often says that pain is the most honest teacher there is. She doesn't lie, she doesn't postpone, she doesn't disguise. She appears to point out where you've lost yourself, and anxiety is a sharp, insistent, uncomfortable pain because it reveals a hidden truth. The truth that there is a conflict between who you really are and who you have learned to be in order to survive. Have you ever stopped to think about this? How many times have you swallowed your will, your truth, your anger, your fear to maintain external harmony? How many times have you been kind, calm, and functional on the outside, but inside, everything was at war? This war is silent, but your body feels it. That's why even without clear reasons, the heart races, hands sweat, mind freezes. You feel like you're about to explode, but you can't explain why. It's because you're playing a character, and anxiety arises to denounce this farce. She's not your enemy. She's the messenger. She's saying you can't live like this anymore. You are trying to fit into patterns that are violent towards you, trying to belong to environments that make you sick, trying to maintain relationships that diminish you. And the price for this is very high, because every time you nullify yourself to fit in somewhere, a part of you dies. And what's left? Anxiety, guilt, disconnection. Anxiety then is not the problem in itself. It's the alarm, it's the symptom, it's the spark that shows you that you are out of your axis, your truth, your essence. But why me, you might ask? And the answer is harsh, but liberating. Because you are sensitive, because you notice, because you feel, because you care. And in this anesthetized world, being sensitive is almost a curse. But it's also a gift, because only those who feel deeply are capable of transforming their own lives. Only those who recognize their pain have a chance of healing it. Peterson insists that it is in the voluntary confrontation of chaos that we find meaning, not running away, not avoiding, but looking straight ahead. Your anxiety is asking you to stop running away from yourself, that you stop being silent. May you stop trying to be what others expect you to be, and start being who you really are. Anxiety reveals the forgotten parts of you, the ignored desires, the avoided choices, the hushed truths. It doesn't define you, but it invites you to define yourself more truthfully. You are not your crisis. You are the one trying to save yourself in the midst of it. You are not your fear. You are courage disguised as confusion. You're going through something difficult, but you're getting through it. And that already says a lot about its strength. So the next time anxiety hits, don't hate yourself for it. Ask yourself, what in me is being ignored right now? This question can change everything, because when you start listening to yourself, you start freeing yourself. In the next chapter, we'll dive even deeper into the invisible pain that many carry without knowing how to deal with it. The invisible pain of being you. There is a pain that doesn't bleed, doesn't leave visible marks, doesn't show up on medical exams, but it destroys from within. It's the pain of being you in a world that constantly demands that you be something else. Waking up is already an effort. Getting out of bed feels like a losing battle. You open your eyes and your chest feels heavy, as if the world were too much to carry. And yet you rise, you live, you go. But no one sees how much it costs you. This is the invisible pain. The pain of trying to stay whole on the outside when everything is in pieces on the inside. The pain of smiling at work while your soul cries silently. From participating in conversations, meetings, gatherings, while your mind is asking for rest, silence, escape. You feel like an imposter. Pretend to be okay. Pretend to be strong. Pretend to be in control. But the truth? You're tired of pretending. And this is where Jordan Peterson brings a powerful reflection. If you pretend long enough, one day, you forget who you really are. And perhaps that's your greatest pain. Not just what you feel, but the fact that you no longer recognize yourself. You don't know what you like anymore. You don't know what inspires you anymore. You no longer know what is light, spontaneous, true. You just know you're surviving. It's hard to explain this pain to someone who has never felt it, because it has no form, no logic, no easy explanation. It's a mix of racing thoughts, irrational fear, and the feeling that something very bad is going to happen, even when everything seems fine. It's as if your mind is always on high alert, as if danger is lurking, but there is no real danger. Only emptiness, only guilt, only weight. And then you blame yourself even more. Why am I like this? Why can't I be normal? But let me tell you straight out, you are not broke. You are overwhelmed. You've been carrying old pains, unspoken words, unresolved traumas. You've been holding back your tears since you were little. You kept quiet to avoid conflict. You made yourself invisible to fit in. And now your body is saying, enough. Anxiety didn't just arrive. It's been with you for a long time. She only grew taller, more visible, more desperate. It's your system trying to protect you, trying to survive in a world that is often hostile to those who feel too much. And here's a truth that maybe no one has told you. You are not alone. Thousands of people live with this invisible pain every day. Strong people, brilliant people, sensitive people, and they all think they are weak because they can't just get it done. But to realize what? Of an inhumane standard, of a productivity that doesn't respect emotions, of relationships that demand perfection without offering acceptance? No, you don't have to handle everything. You need, first of all, to take care of yourself. And it starts with a decision to stop abandoning yourself. If this resonates with you in any way, please subscribe and like. This will help this video reach someone who might be desperate right now, and you'll have been a part of that. The next chapter, we will break the cruelest myth of all, the myth of emotional weakness. Have you ever found yourself apologizing for crying? Have you ever said, "Sorry, I'm just too sensitive," as if feeling were a mistake? Well, know this. This is not weakness. This is humanity. But we live in a culture that idolizes emotional coolness, that rewards those who keep quiet, those who don't get upset, those who are rational. And this creates a deeply destructive lie. That feeling is a sign of weakness. You learned this without realizing it. He learned that showing pain is shameful, that feeling angry is wrong, that expressing sadness is drama. And little by little, he swallowed his emotions, molding himself, hiding himself. But the truth is, this armor you wear is killing you inside. Jordan Peterson says, "Strength is not in not feeling. True strength is in facing what you feel without destroying yourself." In other words, the strong are not those who repress. It's the one who looks at their own chaos and decides to walk anyway. Do you feel too much? Great. That means you're alive, that you haven't been completely numbed by this fast-paced, superficial world. But of course it hurts, because when you feel deeply, everything weighs more. Rejection weighs more. Abandonment weighs more. The failure, the pressure, the fear, everything seems multiplied. And then you start to wonder, is there something wrong with me? No, it doesn't. The mistake is in making you believe that there is only one right way to be: cold, productive, stable, constant. But that's not life. That's performance. You are not a machine. You are a human being who feels, loves, suffers, gets tired, desires, fails, and tries again. The anxiety you carry does not prove your fragility, prove your fight. You are trying to function in a system that does not respect your internal rhythm. You're trying to cope with everything while feeling broken. And yet, he keeps trying. Is this weakness? Peterson states, "It takes more courage to stand up with a broken heart than to pretend everything is okay." And he is right. Society has trained us to appear strong, but true strength isn't in seeming, it's in continuing. Keep feeling, keep searching for meaning, keep going, even while crying. You don't need to apologize for being sensitive. You need to allow yourself to be whole. Pain doesn't diminish you. It only reveals how much you are still alive. And truly living does include feeling fear, having doubts, making mistakes, falling apart. But it also includes starting over, includes remaking yourself. It includes discovering that there is beauty in vulnerability. When you accept that feeling is not weakness, that's when you begin to free yourself. Free yourself from the burden of appearing strong. Free yourself from the obligation to be impeccable. Free yourself from the fear of being seen in pieces. You don't have to be impenetrable. It needs to be true. In the next chapter, we'll talk about something powerful. You are not broken. You are awake. Maybe you believe there is something wrong with you, that your anxiety is proof of a defect, that your racing mind, your constant fears, and your exhaustion are signs of weakness. But what if I told you that's not it? What if I told you that your anxiety is not a failure, but an awakening? Jordan Peterson says, "Pain is a sign that something needs to be transformed. And when you feel anxiety, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're aware. You notice the cracks in your life. You feel what many strive to ignore. You see the instability that others disguise. You're not broken. You're awake. Look around you. How many people live on autopilot? They work, they run, they accumulate responsibilities, but they don't stop to feel. They anesthetize themselves with screens, distractions, consumption. They escape the void by occupying themselves to the point of exhaustion. And you can't escape. You feel it. You notice the weight, the emptiness, the pressure. And this, although painful, is also a form of lucidity. Of course it hurts, because when you're awake, you can't pretend anymore. You realize that your relationships are not so healthy, that your routine doesn't nourish you, that your choices are full of compromises. And then the body screams, "Wake up. You can't live like this anymore." Anxiety is not proof of your failure. It's proof that your soul refuses to be silenced. You are trying to adapt to a world that doesn't respect who you really are. And the conflict between what you feel and what you show explodes within you. This is what creates this suffocation, this racing heart, this mind that never rests. But understand, This chaos is a call for you to reconnect with your essence, to stop living on autopilot, to abandon the version of yourself that was built just to please. Peterson recalls that the meaning of life is not to avoid suffering, but to meet it head-on and transform it into something meaningful. And that's exactly what anxiety is asking of you. Don't fight her as if she were an enemy. Listen to it like you listen to an alarm. She's saying, you can't go on living like this anymore. You need to change. This change is not simple. It doesn't happen overnight. But it starts with one step, accepting that you are not broken. You are human. Too human, perhaps, to fit into a life that demands mechanicity. And that's why he feels. That's why he suffers. That's why you wake up in the middle of the night with your heart racing. It's not a defect, it's a sign. You don't have to hate yourself for feeling. You need to listen to yourself. Maybe you need to change your routine. Maybe you need to reevaluate your relationships. Maybe you need to look inside with courage and admit what hurts. But it all starts with a decision. To stop seeing yourself as broken. You are not a faulty machine. You are a human being in the process of awakening. And this awakening, although painful, is also the beginning of your liberation. In the next chapter, we'll talk about something that traps millions of people every day. The voice you silence every day. There is a voice inside you that tries to speak every day. Sometimes she whispers, sometimes she screams, but almost always you shut her up. It is the voice that says, I am tired. It is the voice that asks, I don't want to live like this anymore. It is the voice that cries out, look at me, I exist. But you learned to ignore it. He learned that he needed to be strong, productive, impeccable. He learned that showing pain was a sign of weakness. And so, he swallowed his own truth. The problem is that when you silence that voice for too long, it finds other ways to manifest itself. It turns into insomnia. It turns into tachycardia. It turns into anguish in the chest. It becomes that suffocating feeling that something is wrong, but you don't know exactly what. Jordan Peterson explains that the repression of something essential in us never disappears. It only returns in a distorted form. And that's exactly what happens to you. What you don't express, your anger, your sadness, your need to be seen, doesn't go away. He returns disguised as anxiety. Your mind doesn't stop because you don't stop betraying yourself. Your body screams because your soul has been silenced. How many times have you wanted to say no, but said yes, just to avoid conflict? How many times did you want to cry, but held back your tears so as not to appear weak? How many times did you want to ask for help, but smiled and said, it's okay? This accumulation is devastating. Every imposed silence becomes a burden. Every hidden truth becomes a prison. Every stifled feeling becomes another stone in the chest. And then, there comes a point where the body can no longer take it. Anxiety explodes. The heart races. He draws his mind. And you feel on the verge of collapse. Not because it is weak, but because he has already endured too much. Peterson insists that healing begins with truth, not in perfection, not in control, not in performance, in truth. This means starting to listen to yourself. Give voice to what you feel, even if it hurts. Acknowledge that you're exhausted. Admit that you're afraid. Allow yourself to be human. You don't need to have all the answers right now, but you need to stop running away from your own voice. Anxiety is precisely the reflection of this escape. She is the cry of everything you have stifled. And here's the truth that could change your life. When you finally decide to listen to yourself, the anxiety begins to lose its strength because she no longer needs to shout to be heard. You begin to embrace your own limits. Start respecting your feelings. Start treating yourself honestly. This does not mean that the pain disappears overnight. It means you stop being your own enemy. And that changes everything. Deep down, you know there's something inside you crying out to be heard. Today, perhaps this is your biggest challenge, giving space to this voice. If this resonates with you in any way, please subscribe and like. This will help this video reach someone who might be desperate right now, and you'll have been a part of that. In the next chapter, we will reflect on the turning point. The day you listen to yourself will be the day everything changes. There is a moment in the life of someone who suffers from anxiety that marks a before and after. It's not when the symptoms go away. It's not when life becomes perfect. That's when you finally decide to listen to yourself. This day may seem simple to those looking from the outside, but for you, it will be a silent revolution, because most of your pain doesn't come from what's going on around you. It comes from abandoning yourself. You say you're fine when you're not. You smile when you want to cry. You accept when you'd like to say no. And in this process, you get lost. Jordan Peterson reminds us that ignoring yourself is the deepest form of lying. And perhaps this is the greatest weight you carry, that of not truly living with what you feel. The day you decide to listen to yourself is the day something in you begins to align. It will be like unlocking a door that has been closed for years. You will realize that that inner voice, which once seemed like an enemy, is actually your greatest ally. Because anxiety, deep down, is not hatred towards you. It's your body begging for attention. It's your mind saying, "Look at me. I can't stand being ignored anymore." When you start listening to yourself, you discover important things. You discover that you are exhausted because you are carrying weights that are not yours. You discover that you are in places that make no sense to your soul. You discover that you are trying to live a life that does not belong to you. And this discovery, although painful, is liberating. At first, it can be scary, because listening to yourself means recognizing that you need to change, and change always requires courage. But it is precisely at this point that the true transformation takes place. Peterson insists that responsibility is the path to meaning. And taking responsibility doesn't mean carrying the world on your shoulders. It's starting to tell yourself, "I deserve to hear myself, I deserve to live in truth." When that day comes, the day you stop keeping quiet to fit in, the day you allow yourself to be honest with yourself, anxiety will shift. She will no longer be a monster that paralyzes you, and it will become a compass that points you where you need to look. Of course, you will still feel scared. There will still be difficult days, but those days will no longer define you, because now you will be present for yourself. Life doesn't ask for perfection. She asks for presence. And presence begins when you listen to yourself. Maybe today you still ignore yourself. Maybe I still live for others. Maybe you're still stuck in patterns that are making you sick. But it only takes one decision to start the process of change, deciding not to betray yourself anymore. This will be the real turning point. The day you listen to yourself will be the day your life begins again. In the next chapter, we'll talk about the most common dilemma for those living with anxiety, between control and courage. Anxiety has a silent root that few realize: the need for control. You try to predict what will happen, try to calculate every detail, try to prepare for all possible scenarios. And yet, life insists on slipping through your fingers. This relentless pursuit of control is one of the biggest traps for those who suffer from anxiety. Because the more you try to hold it all in, the more you realize you can't. And in that emptiness, fear grows. Jordan Peterson reminds us that life is suffering and chaos, but it is in the voluntary confrontation of this chaos that we find meaning. In other words, life will never give you all the guarantees. The future will never be fully predictable, and trying to control the uncontrollable only increases your pain. What you need is not more control. It takes more courage. Courage to accept that you don't have all the answers. Courage to take steps even when trembling. Courage to endure uncertainty without destroying yourself. Anxiety tries to convince you that if you don't control everything, something terrible will happen. But the truth is, your life isn't falling apart. It is asking to be lived in a more real way. Think about it. How many opportunities have you missed trying to ensure absolute security? How many relationships have you avoided? How many dreams have you put aside because you weren't sure of the outcome? This is the prison of control. You don't live, you manage risks. You don't give in, you calculate. You don't breathe the present, you anticipate the future. And paradoxically, it is precisely this attempt at control that fuels your anxiety. The more you try to hold on, the more you feel like you're losing ground. But there is another way, the path of courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is deciding to continue even when you are afraid. It's allowing yourself to live despite uncertainty. Peterson insists that true strength lies in stepping into the unknown, not because you trust the future, but because you trust your ability to face whatever comes. This shift in perspective is transformative. You stop, asking, what if it goes wrong? And he starts asking, what if I can handle whatever goes wrong? This changes everything, because it takes the weight off control and puts the focus on your resilience. You don't need to control the world. You need to strengthen yourself. And this strengthening begins with small acts of courage. Say what you feel, even if you're afraid of the reaction. Take a step towards your dream, even without guarantee of success. Accept that the present is the only place where you can truly act. When you trade control for courage, life begins to open up again. You discover that you don't need to anticipate everything to live. You just need to allow yourself to be here, now. And anxiety, which was once a monster, begins to become a teacher. It shows you where you're still trying to hold on too much and invites you to let go. In the next chapter, we'll talk about something essential: when you decide to stay with yourself. Perhaps one of the most painful experiences of anxiety is the feeling of abandonment. Not just the abandonment that comes from others, but the abandonment that you practice against yourself. You feel afraid, but you say to yourself, it's nothing. You feel pain, but you answer, I need to hold on. You feel lonely, but you repeat, I can't bother anyone. And so he moves further and further away from himself. Jordan Peterson explains that there is no greater prison than living at war with yourself. And if you stop and think about it, that's exactly what happens when anxiety takes over. You split yourself in two, a part that feels deeply, and another part that tries to stifle what it feels. This internal conflict creates a wound that repeats itself every day. And every time you choose to remain silent, that wound opens wider. But there is a turning point, a day when you finally decide to be with yourself. That day is not when everything gets better. It's not when the symptoms go away. It's when you choose not to run away from yourself. You decide to look at your pain without masks. Decide to listen to your inner voice without censorship. He decides to offer himself the presence he has always sought in others. It is at this moment that loneliness begins to transform. Because even if the whole world doesn't understand you, you understand yourself. And even if no one is by your side, you are. This changes everything. Because the worst loneliness is not the lack of external company. It is the absence of oneself within one's own life. Peterson insists that the highest responsibility we have is to ourselves. And taking that responsibility means stopping abandoning yourself. It means being with yourself even on days when you have no strength. Anxiety loses its power when you stop treating it as an enemy. It is, in fact, a calling, a request for you to come to your senses. You don't have to run away from your crises. You need to learn to hold yourself together during them. You need to say to yourself, I'm not leaving, I'm here. This decision is powerful because it transforms the relationship you have with yourself. And from then on, everything around begins to change. Yes, there will be moments of fear. Yes, there will be relapses, but you won't be alone anymore because finally you chose yourself. It is this choice that heals. It is this choice that rebuilds. It is this choice that begins your liberation. You don't need perfection to embrace yourself. It just needs presence. If this resonates with you in any way, please subscribe and like. This will help this video reach someone who might be desperate right now, and you'll have been a part of that. In the next chapter, we will conclude this journey. You are not alone. You are finding yourself. You believed for a long time that your anxiety was a sentence, that it made you weak, inferior, incapable of living like others live. But the truth is different. Your anxiety is not a sign of weakness. She is a reminder that you are still alive. What you feel, what you understand, what you care about, that your soul does not conform to living anesthetized. And here's the final twist. You're not alone on this journey. Even when it seems like no one understands, there are millions of people carrying invisible pain like yours, each one in silence, thinking that he is weak, that he is the only one, that he is broken. But they're not, and neither are you. Jordan Peterson says that life is suffering, but there is meaning in carrying that burden when you choose to face it. What does this mean for you today? It means that anxiety doesn't have to be the end of your story. It could be the beginning of your reconstruction. You are not alone because there is a silent community of people who also suffer, who also cry in silence, who also wonder if they will ever be able to breathe in peace. And you are not alone because Every time you decide to listen to yourself, you find within yourself the company you have always sought out there. The real encounter happens within. Anxiety, as cruel as it may seem, is pushing you toward this meeting. She is telling you, look at yourself now. Take care of yourself now. Stop abandoning yourself now. And when you accept that calling, something starts to change. You discover that you don't need a perfect world to start living. You don't have to eliminate all pain to find meaning. You don't have to wait for fear to disappear to take a step forward. You just need to choose to be present with yourself, staying by your side, even when no one else will. If you reach out, even when everything inside you tells you to give up, that's the secret. You're not alone because you finally decided not to abandon yourself. Maybe it still hurts. Perhaps there are still crises. Maybe there will still be sleepless nights. But now there is also a decision to find oneself and not to lose oneself anymore. Peterson insists that human beings only find meaning when they take responsibility for their own lives. And your first responsibility is this: to take care of yourself as you would take care of someone you love deeply. You deserve this attention. You deserve this presence. You deserve this chance to rebuild yourself. So when anxiety hits, remember, she's not saying you're weak. It's saying you're human. And being human is at the same time heavy and extraordinary. Today, you have the choice: or keep abandoning yourself, or decide finally to find yourself. And if you've come this far, it's because a part of you has already chosen. If this video spoke to you, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it right now. This simple gesture could reach someone who, right now, is silently experiencing the same despair you once knew. You are not alone. You are finding yourself.